We have a special session for you today. And what I'm going to do, we're going to go through some introductions first. First of all, we're all Boilermakers in this room, including me, okay? So that's the first thing. Okay. Everybody in the front of the room that you see here today are here because they have left Purdue with a degree and they have done some marvelous things where they went. And they've exemplified, done some wonderful things with their degrees. And so we have selected them to come back and to be honored in this week or this day we call the Civil Engineer Alumni Achievement Award Honoree Day. Most of them have sat in CE 498 in the past, in senior design. And so they know kind of what you're going through. Okay. The purpose this morning in getting together with these folks is to find out what their secret might be in terms of doing exceptionally well in the civil engineering profession. So as we get into our discussions this morning, they tell us about themselves and what they've done. Hopefully in that we will find maybe some nuggets of secrets that will help you when you graduate in a few weeks now and get into the profession. So that's the whole idea of this forum this morning. One of our honorees is not here. She's still in Texas. She's the Dean of Engineering down there, and her flights were canceled. Hopefully she'll make it tonight for our dinner in the North Purdue Ballroom. Okay, so first of all, on your left here is Robert Threlkeld, got his BSCE here in 1998, his MS in 2000. He is the Global Manager for General Motors Renewable Energy out of Warren, Michigan. Okay. Next to him is Doug Owen. Now, Doug Owen got his degree here. Let me get the second sheet going here. Doug Owen, 1980, okay. He is now Senior Principal with Stantec Incorporated. He's also a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Next gentleman is Derek Crider, BSCE 78, MS in 1980. He's the National Practice Leader for Strategic Planning Service Group at AECOM, a large engineering consulting firm out of Washington, D.C. Keith Churchill on his left. 2006 for his BSCE degree. He's the Chief Innovation Officer with Bechtel Global Incorporated. Okay. And next is Carlos, Dr. Carlos Santamarina, PhD 87. He is the professor and the cloud chair at the Georgia Institute of Technology. These folks wouldn't be here if they hadn't done something very, very special in their careers, and that's why they're here. So with that, what I'm going to do is ask each of these gentlemen to tell us how they got to where they are and how did they do it. What's the secret to success? Robert, we're going to begin with you.
All right. You want to stand?
You can sit, you can stand. It's up to you. Whatever makes you feel better.
Whatever makes me feel better. I'll stand. Why not? You know, that way at least all the attention's focused on me. So, Rob Threlkeld, as mentioned, so I've been in the Midwest all my life, and the number one driver for me has really been the passion of being in the environmental space and really driving society and moving things forward. Really kind of goes back to my second grade education, believe it or not. I had a teacher and we started talking about environmental and started talking about acid rain, acid deposition, and I really wanted to do something that improved society. So obviously came to Purdue, graduated from Purdue, was a co-op here, actually co-opted General Electric in Fort Wayne at the time for aircraft engines, got to watch them build the original 777 GE90 engine, which was at the time the largest jet engine in the world, which is pretty interesting. So when you think of it from an engineering civil background, but looking at the mechanical side of things with the destructive analysis of some of the work that they went through on that, I worked in their environmental health and safety. Did that for about 5 co-op sessions, so that was called about 2.5 years. I got great industry experience in that really made my decision to go ahead and get a master's because I wanted to advance and get into my master's program too. I wanted to get into a large company and really work in the large company space and looking at how they advanced kind of through their careers in large companies. Having my co-op experience master's for me felt like it was an important element for me to do that. graduated with that in 2000 and went into basically into General Motors, and I've been there for now 24 years, almost 24 years, I will say, in June, and really focused on what drove my passion. And I really like to work with people. I like to work with partnerships, both internal and external, and that's really where I've kind of accelerated my base going through my entire career at General Motors. But interestingly enough, I got to touch different parts of the business. I went into engineering, quickly found out when I was building wastewater treatment plants on the industrial side that I wanted to operate all the pumps because it was kind of fun to get down into the actual nuts and bolts of how facilities run. Did that for about 5 years, helped build a plant in Mexico. So I went back into engineering after becoming a powerhouse chief engineer, running some of our largest power plants in the company. And from there, but interestingly enough, I still wanted to get back to my passion of how do I improve from an environmental perspective. And I always had interest in the renewable space, just read a lot in the early parts of my career, and went back into our contracting part of our company. So you think about it as an engineer, you got to understand the nuts and bolts and everything else, but there's a lot of contracts that go on. You'll probably hear that from other gentlemen that are here as well. You have to spend money on one way or another. Either the company spends money or a company is earning money based on how you contract for various different scale projects, as you probably learned in your senior design class that you're doing here right now, whether it's buying bolt, whether it's buying pumps, whether it's buying pipe, whether it's building the building itself. You've got to spend money on that. So I went back into contracting. At the early time of my career, call about 5 years in, I was able to go into the energy efficiency contracting and our efforts and around basically third parties, which are third parties or another company owns the powerhouse or so on at GM facilities. And I started doing renewable energy. And that was really where my passion was. And as Bob Jacko mentioned here, or I should call it Dr. Jacko, as you probably referenced to him. But I got into the renewable space and I was able to basically build the entire renewable energy procurement structure for General Motors. And today, we're actually one of the largest buyers of renewable energy in the world. In fact, I've helped support contracting for about $3 billion worth of investment that GM isn't directly invested in, but we're indirectly invested because we've contracted for those services. I will say one of the things that I did learn in the part of the partnership and collaboration is we did join the RE100 initiative, which is getting our global operations 100% renewable electricity in 2016. And this is where I actually got to present to our CFO and Chief Accounting Officer, Technical Accounting Officer. And so you got to start to think about the nuts and bolts, but how do you start to really talk to somebody who really doesn't really understand renewable energy? I went in the first time and gave a whole pitch about how I'm going to get to renewable energy done within General Motors. A whole idea of buying the amount of renewable energy that we do for our entire global operations. And I remember the first words out of the mouth was, we like the concept of where you're going, but how do we manage the risk? Come back with a better plan. And I was like, well, at least I didn't get completely shut out the door. But I had to think strategically, what does that really mean from a risk profile in a large company? So as you think back in engineers, we're problem solvers. We're problem solvers for the broader effort. I wanted to continue to procure renewable energy, but I had to think of it, how do we manage the financial risks associated with that? And I came back with a 4-pillar strategy. And the 4-pillar strategy was, we continue to do the things that we've been doing, reducing energy consumption in our facilities, which obviously reduces the denominator and the amount of renewable energy we got to build. We're going to source renewables, and I'm going to work with our utilities, work with third-party developers to source the renewables that we need for our facilities. But at the same time, a few other things have changed in our business. We started going down the path of making electric vehicles and investing into batteries. And so how do we start to think about addressing the intermittency that come from advancing renewables in the globe, basically? And so it was around addressing the intermittency that renewables bring to the grid through battery storage and other technologies that demand response, think about shutting off lights, things throughout the day, as the power consumption fluctuates from peaks to troughs. And so that was our third pillar. And the fourth pillar was really in the policy and scale space. And I really liked, obviously, talking with regulators and policies and legislators about moving the entire state of Michigan. We just passed our clean energy standard. I was highly involved with behind the scenes of why industry is really supportive of clean energy. And so those were the 4 pillars. Went back, pitched it, and they, the chief financial officer at the time said, I love it because what I can do is basically accelerate or decelerate any part of these pillars based on the risk that the company can take at any given point in time. And so fast forward to where we are today, we've now sourced enough renewables for our entire company. We've sourced about 1,700 megawatts in the U.S. We're about the 10th largest buyer of renewables. To meet our goal, we actually accelerated the goal from 2050 to 2025. I was able to prove that out. So in a short window of time, not only did we take a goal, we accelerated it and we've met it. And I've secured the amount of load to do that. But I've also taken on broader capacities. So I manage the broader energy procurement for our global operations, so about $750 million of energy spend. So now I actually manage both the general traditional procurement and renewables in ways that kind of integrate things together from a risk profile. As we know, the energy transition is underway as we try to decarbonize the grid. Electrification is driving load growth, and so how do I integrate that all together as part of the story with the team that I now lead, doing the broader global energy procurement and reliability for operations. So it's really keeping that flexibility. The partnerships and collaborations have been a key element of that, both internally, because you work across a number of functions within the company, and then externally, because you got to work across the policy landscape, you got to work across the regulatory landscape. I was just literally in DC at the National North American Association of Regulated Utility Commissioners. Yeah, that doesn't sound so much fun, but at least you get to talk and geek out in areas of the energy landscape with a lot of lawyers that are actually in the public utility commission space and talk to it from an engineering perspective and how to manage and really transition underway. So it's been an exciting career to go through that, and seeing it, but a lot of the bases that I learned here in the classes are instrumental in really thinking through the different ways we got to problem solve on a grand scale and take a lot of what, if you work in a large company, feedback from your chief financial officer and figure out ways to actually answer the question that he actually proposed, because he's looking at it from a financial perspective. I'm looking at it from an engineering perspective. We have to make both of those links. So
okay, let's any questions for Robert before we move on right now? Okay, so give me 2 words to your success. 2 words. I heard some words. You tell me.
Yep. Passion, partnership.
Double P, P squared.
You got it.
Passion and partnership. All right. Thank you, Robert.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Doug Owen, let's hear from Doug next. Now, Doug, again, is the senior principal with Stantec, big firm. So tell us about your life and your successes.
Well, when I left, when I graduated from Purdue in 1980, which, by the way, is the last time that the men's basketball team is in the Final Four. Go
oh my God,
Boilers.
1980.
Yeah. I do this because I watched the 1999 women's team too, which
so
was absolutely
fantastic. So why don't you
fantastic.
say Boiler up to the crowd one. Say it right now.
Boiler up.
All right, there we go. All right.
So anyways, which was a great year. I went on to graduate school, directly to graduate school at that time at North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And my world revolves around water. I do water supply, water treatment. It was a water resources engineering program, master's. I was in an environmental major here, and that's was where, as Bob was saying, my passion was. I was very interested in it. If you're interested in water, it's a very exciting time to be in water right now. The story I often tell is when I graduated, and many of my friends were, getting married. At the time, we'd go to weddings, and we were all there, and there was like a whole spate of them. And we'd sit, and you go around the table, and you go, "What do you do for a living?" And people go, "Oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an MBA, all this." And they go, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a water engineer." And they go, "Oh, that's nice." And then that was it. We talked about what everybody else did. Well, now my children's friends and people, family that I know are getting married, and we go and we sit at the table and we go around and we do the same thing, and they say, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a water engineer." And that's all we talk about for the rest of the night. Do we have enough water? Can you desalinate water? What about climate change? How's that affecting, migration of people around the world? It's a fascinating transition in the last 40 years. So you're in a really, regardless of whether you're in water or if you're in engineering in general, it's a really terrific time to be in the business. So when I got out, I was talking to my major advisor at the time at North Carolina, and he said, "Go work for a consulting firm because they're working on big issues, and you'll work for municipal and industrial and federal clients, and you'll have the opportunity to understand, what our major metropolitan areas or the federal government or industries are trying to do, and and how they have to manage their water systems." And I just started as, I was just a water process engineer in a large group, and those are the kinds of things that I worked on. And then, and the first piece of advice is look for opportunity to work on on major transformative projects. If you can get on those, you'll work in large teams with a gradation of people with experience and talent that you can learn from, because of course learning is a lifelong thing. So that's, working for this company in their headquarters, I had the opportunity to do that. The second thing is when opportunities came up for me to, they needed an engine. I was in New York metropolitan area at the time. They said, we need somebody in Texas, and we need somebody in Arizona, and we need somebody in California. Our offices are there, they're growing. We need somebody with some experience. Go. Travel if you can. Live in a new geographic area, maybe even overseas. I didn't have the opportunity to do that. I have many colleagues who have, and it's been a fantastic experience. And do it when you can. When there's not, when you don't have. I have moved several times, including with family and the rest of it. But if you can do it when you're younger, when you don't have as many ties and everything, take advantage of that, because you'll learn the new geographic precedents for what you do. When I was in New York, it was all about water quality. As soon as I ended up in California, it was all about water quantity. And where are we going to have the water? Not that we didn't care about quality, that had to come with it, but the issue was, how do we actually get the water resource? How do we maintain that resource? How do we go forward? Through that, and I'm going to finish with what I do right now, but through that entire process, take advantage early on to join professional organizations that you're engaged in, and get on committees. And you may not feel like you know very much. That's okay. There's a lot of people on those committees who know a lot, but they don't do anything. They don't have time, and that doesn't mean they're not helpful, but it means they don't have time to get it done. And what they need on committees is people who will actually do something and produce something. So you can listen to, these talented people in your area, and then you can take that information and write a document and do other things and get it 90% of the way there. And then, they'll check it, and now you have connectivity to all those individuals that have experience who can help. Because your mentors are not just the people that you work with. They're everybody in the profession, that you can integrate with. And it is really this engineering world, and my world in particular in water, is a very small business. You run into people continually throughout your life in different places where you've known them, where they've worked on one type of thing, and then they're your client. As the general manager at Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and you used to be on a committee with them, or you used to work with them at a consulting firm or whatever. So, keep track of all those kinds of relationships. So I had the opportunity to do a few other things. I provided technical support for EPA as a consultant on major regulatory work, and then went through the entire managing a large, 1,000-person business unit, $300 million in revenue, all that, where you don't do any engineering. It's all about managing people. And now I've been fortunate at this point in my career, all I do is I work and manage and deliver a large potable reuse project, taking wastewater, turning it into a drinking water source in Southern California, high technology, about $1.5 billion in the first phase, another $3 billion in the second phase. And it's a perfect kind of circular career for me, because what I do now is use everything that I learned about before. I learned, technical work, project management work, regulatory work, and facilitation, because it's really about working as a team now in what you're doing. You're doing this for the rest of your career. It's about working together with people and everybody working together to help move something to a better place. And so I work right in the client's office. I had a meeting yesterday with City Council. I'll have another one tomorrow with City Council, helping explain to them, some things that are going on in the construction world. And as you move through your career, you'll have the opportunity to interface with those. So, you know, the people part of this is as much fun as the technical part. So, you know, just enjoy that.
Two words to your success. You would say what?
I would say passion and teamwork.
Passion, PT. All right. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Doc. All right. Next is we have Derek Crider. Derek, as I said earlier, is with AECOM. I do believe you're retired VP now. Is that right?
I did retire.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Very good. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, the good part, yes, I did retire. After 40 years of working, I started working in 1981 and I retired in 2021. But I'm still kind of working casually. But I'll go back to the Purdue period, 1978. I got here and I started off in double E. Okay, don't gasp. But, and the reason behind that, I was always fascinated with railways. Okay, I was in Indiana, this is my home state, but I was frequently in Chicago. So I take the L, I take the South Shore, I take commuter rail. I said, how does this work? What's the structure of the system? Why do they know how many coaches to have on each train? Why is it was in Metro Electric, they called it the IC. Why is this electric and why is the other diesel operated? How many tracks do you need at these stations? So I said, you know, I think civil engineering might really be a better fit. First, I was interested in the power systems. I said, no, I want to find out how to pull it together. So came in, did Purdue, graduated in '78. But in the interim period, I did something that I thought would be interesting. I went to Germany on a study abroad program because I knew the European transit systems were quite advanced and they were doing things at that time, as I felt, so much better than the U.S. I digress about what I feel today, but I'll get to that. And I mean, that really proved to be a very good opportunity because a lot of the courses I studied there focus on transit and transportation and urban planning and how really to make cities better, as opposed to sometimes the American or U.S. view is that cities are something to be thrown away and let's move to suburbia or the latest, greatest new place in Greenfield, so let's start over instead of preserving what we have and making it better. Came back to Purdue, finished, graduated, and decided to go to grad school. But after I had had a taste of traveling around Europe, and I thought, well, I've got 40 years to work at that time, so let's have a little fun too. Think about that because having fun can be part of the engineering experience. One person did ask me, do you travel to all these European cities and just ride trains and look at... Yeah. And while I was doing that, I'm looking at the tracks, I'm looking at the switches, I'm looking at the type of rail. And I said, all of this was part of the learning experience and great fun to travel to. Came back and I thought, okay, what can I do next? I applied for a Fulbright. And I said, you know, my study area will be application of European rail design standards to American railroads. Shockingly, it was accepted. I said, oh, well, this is kind of derailed, no pun intended, my plans for grad school, but I will go to Germany again and study rail. So I did that, really focused on rail functioning. I did an internship in Germany at a transit authority where you really get to see how someone can operate trains every 30 seconds. And it works. Came back and finished. So then I said, okay, it's time to graduate, 1981, move on to the real world of work. And I would say one of the great things about Purdue, it gave me the background, not only of the technical analysis, but also in communication, how to speak, because no matter how great the project is, if you can't communicate this, if you can't express it to people who make decisions, often not engineers, then you don't have a project. So the way I would say a key thing is to learning to translate great technical analysis and understanding, which I like, but making it to a place where you can tell some political person, this is why this is a great project. You can sell this project. This is why the federal government should fund this project. Okay, so I graduated from Purdue, and at that time the economy was dreadful. I went to every transit agency in the United States and found nothing. So anyway, I ended up at Federal Highway Administration. It was great for exactly 2 months because the incoming, there had just been an election, the incoming president said, everyone hired under President X is now fired. That included me. So there I was out on the street. So I kept looking, so I ended up going to Portland, Oregon, where they were building a great light rail system. I said, this is a great place to get started. So when I did there, I ended up doing track work, track design, park and rides, Then got into the bus analysis, how many trains, all of that, Portland. And then from Portland, I learned that you have to be flexible. Opportunity came up in Houston. They're building a great system. From that, it went on to other cities. So I'm not going to drag you through all of this, but what I will say, and I'll touch upon what some of my colleagues have said, be flexible, because it often offers you an opportunity to learn something new and different. Portland, very organized city, very dense, old city, and everyone was in agreement. Houston was growing rapidly at that time, and I don't think it's an understatement to say that people are not in agreement in Texas. So that was quite a challenge. And the challenges, though, often are the things that really make one rise to the top and come up with the great solutions. So after Houston, I moved on to a little bit of management. So once I was doing the design work, and then I had a group of planners and engineers that started to do that. So what you'll find, sometimes you start off doing that technical analysis, and then you move on, 40 years later, you're managing people. Is this good or bad? I won't say that, but it's an experience to think about. Some people really thrive on management. In some cases it's great, and other times you find yourself longing for just a simple time of, can I go in and just do this analysis and slap down the paper and say, here's your answer, and not deal with collaboration. But no, again, collaboration is key. Moving, that was mentioned. Oftentimes moves mean new opportunities and also means moving up. Working with people, and I'll touch on this again, you often will find this is a small industry, so you will work with many of the same people. So don't slam the door as you walk out. Leave politely, because you never know with whom you might be working again. So as I moved on from that, so I can say I've ended up working on a lot of the major transit projects in the city. So if you go to Seattle, the first leg of Honolulu finally opened. This has had a 20-year gestation period. I was working in Honolulu in the late 90s, and it just opened. And you think working in paradise was paradise. No, it was not. This was a difficult project, difficult politics, and difficult engineering. And if anyone has ever seen H3, which is interstate on Oahu, basically a stillway because of environmental aspects. And I bring that up because it's not just a simple engineering, it is bringing the aspects of design together with environmental analysis, which really does dictate what you can and cannot do in many cases. Matching that with financing and funding resources. Can you afford what you want to build? And if you cannot, how do you change that? And oftentimes the greatest plans start, and what you end up with will be very different, because you have the environmental aspects, you have the financial aspects, then you go back and you have the mitigation, and you go back and forth. And like I said, for most of the rail projects, I would say 20 years or so. Honolulu has been on, Minneapolis, same thing. Washington, the Purple Line that's under construction now, that was my last project. And that brings us to the other important issue, the P factor. Politics. The Purple Line goes from Bethesda to New Carrollton and goes through a very affluent section where people can be quite astute in filing lawsuits to stop your project. And then you check, you may have the greatest answers, you may know all the engineering responses, but if you don't make a good presentation in court, you lose. So, just something else to bear in mind. So I'll jump ahead. I don't want to take up all the time. So after that, my last few years, I ended up managing a group of what's called strategic planning services. And in that, it kind of encapsulated everything. I had planners who did the design. Another group of planners who did forecast. For roadways as well as for transit. Year A, how many riders or how many cars will be using this in year X, and your horizon year, your design year. What would that be? I also had economists to say, what effect will this project have on the local economy? What are the benefits? And how can you prove that these will accrue? I also had governance. How will this be structured? How will this project be managed on the short term and the long term? Then I also had financial analysis and came up with funding, where the funding can come from, and how long the funding will be sustainable. So that was it. I would say, in a nutshell, Be open, be flexible, and realize that where you start may not be where you end up, but you have a great base, and make it fun along the way. I would say travel, definitely. I forgot one place. I did do the international stint. I was in Abu Dhabi and Dubai when they were building the longest automated metro in the world. And many of my colleagues said, no, the Emiratis will never ride this, absolutely not. They're driving everywhere. Well, that's not true. Everyone drives a very expensive car to the nearest park and ride, and then they take the rail line all along the sheep side of the road. So it is not true. Last but not least, Abu Dhabi, the capital, did not build a metro because, yes, they have plenty of money, but they don't want to spend it all. So they improve their buses. So sometimes things don't turn out as you wish.
Very good. Well,
That's
thank
it.
you. And you tried to help Abu Dhabi spend all the money, right?
We were trying to.
Okay, very good. Give us one word to your
But it was-
success.
Collaboration and flexibility.
All right, all right. CF, very good. Thank you very much. All right, and next we have Keith Churchill. As I said earlier, he's the Chief Innovation Officer for Bechtel Global.
Yeah,
Keith.
thank you. I was hoping we didn't set the precedent of standing up.
Sorry.
Class this morning. No. I'm so excited to be here this morning and talk with you all. This recognition was very unexpected. As you can see, I am the youngest of the group. I graduated in 2006. I remember sitting not in this room, but in the final design class and struggling through it and trying to figure out, how we were going to get there and just really trying to figure out how to get everybody else to do something. It felt like, I don't know. We were doing a bridge down across, and I can't remember the name of the road, but it's the main river road, I guess, that goes out where the old hotel is there now by McDonald's. They were trying to look at a bridge.
We did a pedestrian bridge there
Right.
at the Tapawingo Park.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It
So
was a 600-foot span that was.
yes. No. It was an amazing project, and it actually worked out really well for me. I had been a co-op student here, and I had gone and worked for Trailer Brothers, which is an infrastructure company that does bridges and marine work. And so I got a lot of experience in bridges, and it just worked out really well that I knew how to build them and was able to provide some insight into that. So that was fortuitous. Had it been another project, I don't know if I would have contributed as much. But I also took part in EPICS when I was here. I think EPICS was younger in its journey, but I had the opportunity to do that. I was a member of Chi Epsilon when I was here. That was a really great opportunity. I actually got to meet Stephen D. Bechtel and Brendan Bechtel and Riley Bechtel here at an event. I don't think I understood the magnitude of it at the time. Bechtel was in a position where they didn't market a whole lot, which is kind of different than what we do today. We're much more outward focused than we were back then. But I was here in 2001. And I was going to go do aerospace. That was my thing. I grew up by the Cincinnati airport. I was always infatuated with planes, and that's what I wanted to go do. And 3 weeks into my freshman year, I remember, it's kind of emotional actually, sitting in front of the TV in my dorm in Cary Quad, watching the second jet hit the World Trade Center. And it profoundly impacted, I think, my outlook on what I wanted to do with my life. And I decided, kind of within that semester that I didn't want to do aerospace and that I wanted to go build things. And I'm a very passionate person. I dove in, and I was encouraged to go do the co-op program, which was just a phenomenal experience for me, and ended up graduating in 2006. I moved to Texas. I worked on the Galveston Causeway for the Interstate 45 going to Galveston Island. I was the main span engineer there, and the great thing about working for Trailer Brothers was that they really wanted you and expected you as an engineer to be hands-on. And so we were doing a cast-in-place segmental cantilever bridge there. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you build a formwork set on top of the piers. I think the piers were like 80 or 90 feet in the air. You build the first segment, set the first segment that's precast up there, and then you just keep building cast-in-place segments, and then you cantilever out. and I had to operate that mechanism moving out, which was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of survey, and so I was leveraging some of the things that I had learned here very early, and I think the best day of my life at that time was the day that we had the two sides meet together, and they were kind of at the same elevation. There were some adjustments that we could make, but we were within, I guess, expectations. So that was really rewarding. After that project, I had one of my best friends who was my college roommate here, who worked for Bechtel, and he was in Houston at the time, and he said, "Hey, they're having a recruiting session at the main office. You should come up." And this is another day that just sticks out in my mind. I had to be up there. I think the thing opened up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't worn a suit since I was in college, so I think it'd been like 2.5 years. And I remember getting up, putting my suit on, and there was like a big tear right here. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like there's nothing I could do, so I'm just gonna go deal with it." And I get up to Houston. It's like a 45-minute drive. And I walk in, and I'm sitting there, and I'm talking to people, and I had 3 people in front of me, and each of them handed their resumes to the person that was sitting at the table, and the person was like, "Hey, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate your time. We'll give you a call." And I was so mad at my college roommate. I was like, "Man, you called me up here. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday just so I could hand over my resume." And I walked up, I put my resume on the table, and they said, "Oh, Purdue, you're going to go to the next room." And it was really incredible. I interviewed with 5 people that day. It was an all-day marathon, interview session. It was a lot of pressure. And then 2 weeks later, I was working for Bechtel in Port Arthur, and so that was like mid-2008. Had no idea where my career would go, and I've heard a lot of people talk about travel and moving and things like that, and flexibility. I think that's completely true in this industry, because the projects vary so much. What you're going to do is kind of unknown. It's kind of unsettling. I don't think I've ever felt settled in my career, which has kind of driven me to continue to work hard and continue to do well. And if I had any advice in terms of how to progress your career, it's don't get caught up on a career path, right? Your career path is going to take you wherever it takes you, and you have to have some sort of initiative to take on and take ownership of your career, but you also have to trust in the people that you are working with, to know that they have, identified your capabilities and have your best interest at heart. And a lot of times it may not feel that way. So I ended up in Port Arthur, Texas, which was a very interesting experience. I had never lived in a place like that. Very, very small area, very, very industrious area. And I bought my first house. I stayed there for 3.5 years, but that project really kind of elevated myself in terms of what I think people's expectations for me were. When you get into Bechtel, you can become very discipline focused, and it's easy to do that, and it's easy to become kind of enamored with, hey, I'm going to be a civil field engineer, then I'm going to become a civil engineer lead, then I'm going to become an area field engineer, and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to know everything, and I really worked hard at that project. It was really kind of interesting, because whenever a holiday would come up and there was holiday work where somebody needed to go home, and there was a piping field engineer or a piping superintendent, and they were like, hey, we don't have anybody to cover piping this weekend. I was like, I'll do it. And if there was something going on with electrical where they needed to test a motor or start something up or power it up and they didn't have anybody to do it, I raised my hand and just did it, right? And I think the thing in construction that is really kind of unique is that you've got kind of the professional expertise that you've got in the business, where you're doing all the project management, you're doing all the construction management, and there's so many great people to learn from on that side of the fence, and you have to take advantage of that. But on the other side of the fence is the craft professionals, right? And the craft professionals, they are phenomenal. I mean, if you can get somebody to care enough to teach you something about their individual trade, it's honestly worth its weight in gold. because they have been there. They've seen what works from a project management perspective. They've seen what doesn't work from a project management perspective. They know what they've done in the past that's worked from a technology perspective or from a hardware perspective or a tool perspective. And I really flanged up with a couple of just amazing electrical, amazing piping people, and just really learned the energy business down to its core, and really understood how the facilities worked, which, I'm not a chemical engineer, but I really took pride in understanding how things work, and I got to be able to see that plant start up. And then it was kind of interesting, so kind of going back to that theme of being flexible. At the time, Bechtel had gotten 3 major liquefied natural gas plants. It was a really interesting situation in Australia. So on the north coast of Australia, there's this place called Curtis Island, and they were building 3 different companies were building LNG export facilities there, literally right next to each other on the island. And so Bechtel's strategy was, we're going to bid on all 3, and we'll get 1. And turns out we ended up with all 3. And it was like $26 billion worth of work. It was the most risk that Bechtel had ever taken on in its history, 125-year history. And I was dead set I was going to Australia, right? And I'll never forget getting called to the office, and this is the day. I've been telling my family I'm going to go to Australia. Everything, this is going to be an awesome international assignment. And I walk in, and the project manager was like, "Hey, Keith, listen, I know everybody's going to Australia, but I'm going to Pascagoula, Mississippi, and you're coming with me." And I was like, it was just like, it's like one of those things. But I was like, okay, if that's what they want me to go do, I'll go do it. And it ended up being, again, a really great career decision for me to not really push back, right? I was like, okay, they have faith in me, I'm going to go do this. And I got elevated to the project management team at the time. And I think at that point, I had kind of become a known commodity of, if you give Keith something, he's going to go do it and get it done. And so it didn't really matter what it was. I got to lead teams. I think I had 115 field engineers on that project, and I was under 30 at the time. And really took pride in being able to deliver that project for Chevron. Again, looking for the next project, I end up in Baytown, Texas. So I've hit all the really nice, really cush places on the Gulf Coast. And so I was there for a time with ExxonMobil, and about halfway through the project, it was a really challenging project. Exxon was a challenging customer for us. They decided to pull me off the job and move me into our corporate organization. So I had the opportunity to really get involved with Bechtel's global operations as the operations manager for the corporate construction organization. So Bechtel's built up of business units. So we do things in the infrastructure side, which is like the metro rails, dams, really large infrastructure projects, power plants, those types of things. We do things in a group called Nuclear Security Environmental, which is obviously nuclear power, but then we do work for the DoD and DOE. We've actually had one of the things that we've done with the DoD since I've been in the role I'm in now is we've worked really closely with Burke Labs to develop further develop a technology called steel plate composite construction that's being used on one of our projects. And I was intimately involved with promoting that for one of our projects. So that's the kind of work we do for the DoD. We're in mining and metals, so we do work in Chile, Australia, and then we've got our first U.S. project here in a while in Northwest Nevada in lithium mining, so that's really exciting. And then energy, which is the oil, gas, and chemical sector, we're doing more in energy transition and things like that today. And then we've started a new business line called Manufacturing Technology, which is really focused on data center semiconductors. But anyway, so we have a corporate organization kind of umbrellas over that. So I was working for our manager construction as the operations manager, really working on promoting Bechtel overall, providing solutions from a staffing perspective, and really got the ability to understand what Bechtel meant from a global perspective, what our vision was, what our values were, and really take in and understand where my place was in the company. At that time, they asked me to go and manage a project to develop a technology center in Houston that we have. It's called the Welding and Applied Technology Center. It was really an interesting opportunity for me to see how we had consolidated all of our welding and material operations into one local location in Houston. But at the same time, I was involved with developing what was called the Future Fund. So we had invested about $60 million into innovation in the construction industry. And the intent was that we would take ideas internally and really, try to promote getting better and continuous improvement throughout the company. At the end of the 3-year period, we had about 3,500 ideas, and about 800 of those were piloted. And of those that were piloted, about 150 of those were piloted at the Welding and Applied Technology Center. So it really became an innovation hub for the construction industry. I was involved with a lot of those initiatives, and then the Chief Innovation Officer position became open, and they asked me to move to Reston, Virginia. And people always ask me, like, Keith, you're only 40. Now I'm 41, I guess, but you're only 40. Like, how did you do this? Like, how could you move into a position like this so young? And I was like, listen, I didn't focus on my career path. I didn't focus on my career progression. I focused on becoming an expert at what I did. I focused at working it really hard, and I focused at delivering what was asked of me. And I'll never forget the first time I met the CEO of Bechtel. I was at a senior meeting at, we call it the Global Business Meeting. It's held in Dana Point, California every year. And I was one of, it's usually like senior vice presidents, principal vice presidents, and I was not that at the time. And I remember going in and my boss had said, hey, Keith, I've arranged for you to meet with the CEO, but it's going to be like, hey, you're going to walk with him from one meeting to the next, right? And so I was walking with him. His name was Jack Future. And I just remember him asking me, like, what are your priorities? What do you really want to do? And I told him, I go, Mr. Future, I honestly, I don't care what I do. I just want to contribute. And I'll never forget this because he stopped, and I didn't expect him to stop. I just expected him to just keep on going. And he stopped and he said, "That's exactly what I want you to do." And over the last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, seeing all of our global projects, interacting with some of the most amazing people from all different cultures, whether it be London, India, Australia, South America, Saudi Arabia. Just see some incredible projects like The Line in Saudi Arabia, which is just the most incredible thing to see in person as it's happening. Be able to be involved in offshore wind foundations, and kind of going back to it, a few months ago, I got a call. We haven't done a lot of data center work, and there's an opportunity that we're undertaking, and I think that the call was, hey, Keith can go do this. And so they've asked me to lead up the team to try to go get this project for us, and that's what I'm working on currently. So I've kind of been all over the place. I do a lot of things. I get involved with everything. But as we look forward to the future, I really want to encourage you to really take advantage of the opportunity that you have in civil engineering, because we impact everything. Everything has to be built. Everything has to be thought through. The transportation challenges are going to be immense. We've got huge sustainability challenges as we look at how to combat climate change. We need to do a better job of being a more diverse and inclusive group, and we need to continue to innovate. And I really take pride in our ability to change the world. So you all have a really amazing opportunity. You all are going to be inheriting what some of us have already progressed. But my challenge to you is to take it to the next step and really follow through. So
Keith, great. One word, Keith. Success. What's your secret?
It has to be flexibility.
Flexibility. All right. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Now, next, we're going to move right on to Professor Carlos Santamarina. He is a professor and the Cloud Chair at Georgia Tech from Atlanta, Georgia. Carlos, go right ahead.
Hard to be wise after so many wise people, right? I mean, there is such a common denominator. So I'm just going to emphasize, probably we're going to resonate with what you have heard. PSF. Those are my words.
PSF.
PSF.
PSF. Pounds per square foot, right?
That is true. No, but so PSF. Let's start with the P. I go back through my career, my life experiences, and I cannot associate a name, a person, to every milestone. And so people is not only the people that you collaborate, the people that you listen to, those mentors, whether they know it or not, that have made a huge difference in my life. So let me start here at Purdue, 1984, 1987. My advisor, Jean-Luc Chemot, was an amazing, he is an amazing mind, very visionary. And my work was on artificial intelligence. And so I began reading and started taking courses on cognitive psychology. One of my closest friends still remains, we have coffee every day, David Frost. He was also doing his PhD. And we would come to this building because the cheapest donuts on campus were here at the coffee shop that the students would run in the basement, 25 cents for a big piece of apple fried or whatever it was called. It was wonderful. We both gained lots of weight during our PhDs. And so people, and I can really put a name on any and every milestone of my life, and to them, my gratitude. I said that, let me run the story further. Jean-Luc Chemot became the president of Caltech. There were a few steps in between, but probably the most accomplished academic leader in recent history in the US. And he was doing extremely well at Caltech, the jewel of the academic system in the US, and JPL, etc. He was doing extremely well when all of a sudden I received an email and he said, I'm moving to Saudi Arabia to be the president of KAUST. By the way, I still remember the email. There were lots of university presidents copied. There were 20 or 30 of us copied on that email. And a fellow that I never knew who he was, copied on the email was Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. So that was a nice email to be CC'd on. Okay? So he moved, and I said, gosh, that's crazy. Going from Caltech to KAUST. A year and a half later, I was at KAUST. So he invited me to go, he shared the dream, he really went in with the dream. And so when you were talking about the line, I know the project very well, Nedmi Nasser. And so I was there for 8 years. But then remember the other guy, David Frost, the professor at Georgia Tech. He invited me to come back to Georgia Tech, and they created a position, and there I am back at Georgia Tech after 8 wonderful years in Saudi Arabia. People. Really, my gratitude to them once again. Now remember that I said I was taking courses in cognitive psychology, so I have maintained a hobby on cognitive psychology. You can find a couple of TED Talks related to that, and so I collected some data. And I soon realized that all of us, just by being here, we are above IQ 100. And above IQ 100, it makes no difference whether you're smarter or not. That's it. Up to 100, your performance in society is highly determined by your IQ. Above 100, no correlation. And we are all above 100. And so then what is the other variable that makes a difference for all these guys here? Right? And you go back and you collect the data and you do the inverse problem, very mathematically done. And folks, it's 80% determined by sweat. Sorry to tell you, it's not a popular message. But that's it.
What was that word, sweat?
Sweat.
Sweat.
Yes.
Ah,
you know,
right.
Einstein said it's 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. Same idea. Mathematically, I actually proved that Einstein was right. Okay? So I had a database of 400 entries or whatever. And 80% determined by hard work. And go ahead and ask these guys. I think that we all work more than 60, 70 hours a week. And we've been doing that consistently throughout our lives. I don't know if I'm wrong, guys, but correct me if I'm wrong, but no?
No.
Really?
No, you're not wrong.
Oh, I'm not wrong.
Sorry.
Yes,
you're right.
Check out the equation. No, so that's what it takes. And then the question is, how can we maintain, that is energy demanding, how can we maintain that level throughout a 40-year career, 50-year career And then the last word is, gosh, choose something that you think that is important and fun. Because it's not the salary, it's not the awards, really it won't make a difference. We are all going to be above the threshold that makes a difference. You really need to wake up in the morning and be willing to go and put the next 14 hours at the job. It has to be fun. People sweat and have fun.
Wonderful. Okay, so here we go. Now, we've run out of time here, but we're not out of time in total because when you go to your design rooms today at 10:30, we have a reception in the Wood Commons. We got coffee. We got donuts. They're very cheap donuts, but they're going to be good. Okay? So come on down to Wood Commons and interact on a one-on-one basis with these folks. Networking is king and it's gold. One of the reasons I'm here is because a guy on my team at Caterpillar Tractor Research many moons ago, because he came to Purdue as a professor and needed students, he got me to come here, and that's why I'm here. It was all because of a person. And that's it. It's magic. So interact with these folks in a few minutes, 10:30, Wood Commons. We'll see you there. Let's give these guys a nice round of applause.